Before this video starts, I just want to give a massive shout out to all my channel members. If you want to receive a shout out, then become a channel member today and you'll be shown on screen like all these other channel members here. Anyways, enjoy the video. On May 15th, version 13.4 dropped in the Japanese version and dropped on June 10th for the international versions. This update contains a lot of content and I want to talk about everything that was added in this version. Since we have loads to cover, all I ask is if you enjoy this update analysis, give it a like and sub to the channel if you haven't already, and comment down below on what was the most exciting thing about this update was for you. Anyways, we have loads to cover. All units discussed here will use their level 30 stats. The first new unit is Akechi Mitsuhide, the newest war god whose real-life counterpart is famous for assassinating Oda Nobunaga. He has an LD that stretches from 450 to 800 range, with a standing range of 550. They also have a 100% chance to knock back Black and Angel enemies, with the 50% chance to summon a surge between 350 and 650 range. This unit is a very solid crowd control unit for the two traits he targets. His guaranteed knockback allows you to easily keep ground, and this unit has 2 checks to reposition enemies in the event they enter his blind spot. First is the Surge, which can spawn up to 100 range inside his blind spot. Due to the way Surges works, this allows them to attack any enemy up to 350 range in his blind spot, but realistically, the Surge won't reach this far, but can still knock back these enemy traits to a point where they leave the blind spot. The second is his Summon, which knocks back every single trait in the range. Since the summon only has 250 more range than Akechi, the summon is ineffective at hitting most enemies unless you use the summon as sort of a last-ditch effort to get enemies off of him. Using the summon for this purpose is the best way to use it. As for his actual stats, he is pretty tanky for an LD unit, having 51,000 health, and his damage of 23,000 may seem more on the average side. The 50% chance to activate a surge gives it a reliable damage boost to 46,000 damage. Overall, a solid addition to the War God family. Next is the June Bride variant of Cat Machine, swapping their Alien and Red resist for Angel and Aku resist, with the 50% chance to weaken for 4 seconds against Aku and 4.8 seconds on Angel enemies. They also have a 75% chance to pierce the Aku shield. Their health stats are somewhere in between Cat Machine Mark II and Mark III, having 127,000 base health. This effectively gives them 510,000 health against Akus and 637,000 health against Angels. However, they deal around 20,000 less damage than the original Cat Machine, dealing 75,000 damage. Unlike the regular Cat Machine, Cake Machine has a much shorter force swing, only lasting 3 seconds instead of 5.6 seconds. This makes them a much more reliable attacker and gives them a ton of chances to weaken and pierce the Aku shield. Their cooldown is slightly longer as well, lasting 71.2 seconds instead of the usual 64.5 seconds. I'd say overall, a solid seasonal unit that could fill a different niche than the usual Cat Machine to help make it more distinct. We have a new June Bride Egg unit, and as it turns out, this unit's actually quite solid if you give them enough levels. Bridal Cat is strong against Aku and zombie enemies and is a behemoth slayer. At level 30, their stats are fine enough, as they have around 30,000 health against Aku or 38,000 health against zombies. They deal way less damage than Cactus, only dealing 5.1k damage compared to Cactus's 9.5k damage against Aku enemies. However, this unit can go up to level 60 through plus levels. Compared to a Cactus at level 50, Cactus is still a better attacker, but the health between the two is extremely similar against Aku. Bridal Cat has 58,000 health against Aku compared to Cactus's 63,000 health. Why this is important is that the unit costs a lot less to hatch compared to Cactus, only costing 10 red and purple stones, cutting out the need for blue, green, and yellow stones. For zombies, you wouldn't really use them as your shield since Wushu is a much better tank, but can still serve as a second layer of defense due to their rather high standing range of 180. Against Behemoth Aku and zombie enemies, they can serve as a great shield and, if given enough levels, a solid offensive unit as well. As an event egg, this unit's actually very good surprisingly enough. It can easily serve as a Cactus replacement for a long stretch of the game, barring the surge immunity. For our last regular unit, we have Vengeance Mercenary Trixie, who currently only exists in the Korean and Taiwanese versions. She's an exclusive Uber to the Best of the Best set and will appear during the Korean and the Taiwanese anniversaries respectively, so EN will most likely get it during their anniversary event. As for the unit herself, she has a very interesting build. First off, she is the first non-true form Uber that is dedicated to targeting relic enemies, but not only that, she also targets traitless and alien enemies. She has a 50% chance to freeze these enemies for a third of a second, which may seem extremely small until you look at the fact that she has a multi-hit that allows her to attack at a fraction of a second, with their total attack length lasting for half a second. This allows her to consistently stagger enemy attacks. While her offensive output isn't the strongest, her extremely fast attack rate allows her to quickly rack up a ton of damage against several enemies at once, especially for her targets, as she also has the strong ability. Her health against Traitless and Relic is 204,000 and against aliens adds up to 255,000. Her damage against her traits is equal to 7.6k damage against Relic and Traitless, while aliens it equals to 8.7k. However, her extremely fast attack rate translates these numbers to an 8.5k base DPS, 12.8k DPS against Traitless and Relics, and against aliens, she has a rather massive 15.4k DPS, allowing you to rack up tons of powerful attacks. Just to add on to her strengths, she is also immune to Slow, Warp, and Curse. This allows her to have a very favorable matchup against most Relic enemies, most starred aliens, and her slow immunity allows her to be extremely useful for dealing with things like Scissorex, Super Hippo, and if boosted enough, Doremi. However, she does have a somewhat short range of 280, which means that Most hard counters her unless you have a Relic cursor on your team. This, however, is very minimal as her strengths make her a very powerful stagger unit and DPS attacker, and when the anniversary event rolls out to the English version, I highly suggest trying to get her here. Then we have a new collab, which sadly isn't coming to the English version this update, but since this collab was added into this update, I might as well talk about it here. This is a collab for the 2023 anime adaptation of Rurouni Kenshin. If you want an in-depth look at each of these Ubers featured in this collab, I recommend checking out my video on the Ubers in the collab, but I will give short summary versions here. The first unit is Hinamura Kenshin, who deals massive damage to Aku and Traitless enemies. They are also Surge Immune. This unit is an extremely good specialist as even at level 30, they deal over 100,000 damage against their targets. This is even greater on them as an anti-Traitless unit, as dedicated anti-Traitless Ubers are hard to come by, especially those that deal this amount of damage. As for Aku, while he lacks the shield pierce, his sheer damage stat allows him to easily brute force most shields open. Their surge immunity allows them to withstand the various death surges and allow them to be a very good option for the Cappy twins. While their general stats are good for a backliner, their elusive targets make them especially good. Next is Sagara Sanosuke, who's an anti-zombie tank with Omni Strike, a 20% chance to Savage Blow, and has freeze immunity. This unit is a very solid zombie tank, having the third highest effective health against them in the game, only behind Cat 8 Behemoth in their Ultra form after Talents and Doom Engine Pandora. They have a general health stat of 149,000, giving them an effective health stat against zombies of 748,000. Their Omni Strike of negative 150 to 440 allows them to snipe enemies that are just behind an enemy with their standing range of 390. Their freeze immunity is neat as it allows them to be used in many more places, especially if one lacks solid freeze immune units. They do have a pretty long force swing of 2.5 seconds, which can cause him to miss his attacks, especially against burrowing zombies. Their damage is also pretty low if they don't land a Savage Blow, only dealing 34,000 damage, but if he does land one, that's a free 100,000 damage. While the weakest of the 4 Ubers in my opinion, he is still very solid at what he does. Then we have Shinamori Aoshi, an LD unit who has a 50% chance to freeze floating and angel enemies for 6 seconds and is strong against them. As a general LD unit, they're in the middle of the road, but against floating and angel enemies, their damage is a solid 50,000 damage with 6.9k DPS with 128,000 health. Shinamori is also slow immune, allowing them to be a solid pick against many of the slowers in this game, and an extremely viable pick for Cleonal and Queen Bee. Seeing as their LD stretches from 250 to 650 range, they pair extremely well with Sanzo, as they can cover this unit's blind spot in the event enemies push towards it. A solid generalist LD unit who is very good against his targets. Last is Saito Hajime, an anti-red and Aku rusher with the 100% chance to pierce the Aku shield. This unit has a standing range of 200 and an Omni Strike of negative 100 to 400, giving them a massive piercing range of 200. At level 30, they deal 66,000 damage against Akus and deal 88,000 damage against red enemies. This unit is a very solid rusher for red enemies, but the main trait is the Aku trait for several reasons. The main one is that a ton of Aku enemies depend on their Aku shield for their survivability, but if you throw in a unit that could just rush in and break it while dealing massive amounts of damage is extremely powerful. To give 2 examples, at level 30, they only need to land 3 hits against a 200% Fallen Bear to kill it, and against a Midnight D, they only need to deal 5 hits. This unit's ability to delete a ton of health from many Aku enemies in an instant by breaking their shields is an extremely broken ability, and the fact that this unit's able to attack the moment they get knocked back means they can shred even more health more quickly. Their Pierce also allows them to snipe any sort of enemy that gets behind the main front line, preventing them from staying alive. Their health is pretty low, however. Only having 34,000 health means that they usually don't get to use all 6 of their knockbacks, but as long as he even gets 2 to 3 hits against most Aku enemies, this will have a major impact on the fight. This unit is legit one of the best anti-Aku Ubers in the game due to the fact they can cut a ton of Aku enemies' health in an instant. Now moving on to the other rarities of this collab, we have Lo Karu, who serves as a less tanky version of Octopus, but trades the bulk for area attack and a standing range of 250. They have the same 50% chance to weaken floating for 8 seconds and have over 100% uptime, meaning they can keep a ton of enemies, especially the Bun Bun variants, weakened for an extended period of time. However, she does have a pretty long cooldown of 20 seconds, meaning that it takes quite a bit to get multiple on the field, and even then, weaken generally isn't that great of a crowd control ability on units who aren't tankers or have extremely high ranges. This unit is pretty good at their job, but there are a ton of more effective ways of crowd controlling floating enemies. Then we have Lo Yahiko, who deals massive damage against floating and angel enemies. This unit is a rusher unit, who deals a very solid 40,000 damage even at level 30 against his targets, and has the same 25 speed as Courier, allowing him to get in and deal tons of damage. This makes them extremely useful on stages such as No Plan A and Honey Trap, as he could easily enter the blind spots of Queen Bee and Cleonel. This unit is somewhat frail, only having 17,000 health means they can't take many hits from enemies, and they do have a pretty long cooldown of 19 seconds, meaning that a mistimed Yahiko means that you will be waiting a bit until you can use them again. Otherwise, this unit is a solid rusher with pretty good damage output against their targets and a surprisingly long standing range for a rusher. Then we have Kenshin Cat, who is strong against red and aliens, having 30,000 health and dealing 6.4k damage against his traits. This unit doesn't really do much outside of the early game, and the fact that they have a short range and single target means they can't do too much on the battlefield. Last is Karu Cat, who has a 20% chance to weaken and dodge black enemy attacks. Just like Kenshin Cat, her usage is mostly regulated to having an early game anti-black crowd controller, as by the time you start unlocking the stronger options, her usage mostly goes out the window. Her lack of area attack really hurts her performance. She has a rather high range for an anti-black unit, but the problem is that single target means much better options are able to be used. In this update, there is one new true form, this being the true form of Boomerang Cat, drawing the Colonel's Fit Comes Fried Chicken Cat. This true form gives them a 100% boost to their health, a standing range buff from 280 to 320, increasing their inner range from 30 to 80, giving them much more wiggle room to let enemies push, curse immunity, zombie killer, relic targeting, and biggest of all, area attack. This unit used to be considered one of the worst advent rewards, but now can have a legitimate place in the meta thanks to all the additions it gained. The relic targeting allows them to shut down the curse of most relics, and the standing range boost allows them to be used on relic enemies like Relic Bun Bun and Emost. Their range and health boost also give them a ton more survivability, and in 4-star can actually serve as a valid LD attacker, as they share very similar DPS to Housewife. Overall, a great true form, but this true form is locked behind an extremely difficult stage, but I will get there when I discuss it. This update sees the addition of one Ultra form. This is the Ultra form of the Grey Fox. The Spectral Cat removes her knockback ability and replaces it with a slow that lasts for 5.6 seconds against red and alien enemies. She also gains an LD, where she hits 63,000 damage between 1 to 466 range, 14.7k damage between 285 and 550, and another 14.7k damage between 385 to 650 range. She also gains a 38% boost to her health, the Strawn, and the Sage Slayer abilities. On screen now is a table showcasing her total damage against her traits, sages, and sage red aliens. Due to her LD, her damage output can vary wildly depending on where the enemies are when she attacks. This Ultra form gave her a great boost to her ability to be a powerhouse against red and alien enemies, but once again she is plagued by the fact that Ultra forms are locked behind 15 Dark Cat's Eyes. If you wanted to evolve her, she needs 2 red and purple behemoth gems, 5 blue behemoth stones, and a gold catfruit seed, making her locked behind a floor 30 infernal tower clear and the 5th unit in the game who needs this item to evolve, after Superstar Mineko and 3 seasonal Neneko variants. Two units gain talents in this update, these being Jizo's Mega Castle and Shishilan Pastalan. Both gain standard attack and defense talents. First is Jizo. They gain Curse and Toxic Immunity as well as Surge Resist. The Surge Resist only really helps if you're using this form to face Saint Dober, basically doubling their survivability against them. However, if you find that the first form of Jizo to be a better option than the third form of Jizo against Saint Dober, then this isn't worth the investment. Toxic Immunity also mainly helps with Papu and Dark Joe, but these enemies tend to have better matchups than the Mega Castle. Last is Curse Immunity, which is a somewhat good talent since a ton of angels are paired with relics or the relic doge base, but again, if you prefer using the first form, then the talent isn't worth it. Maybe once we get a Jizo Ultra form that some of these talents will get more use. Second is Shishilan Pastalan, who gains a 50% chance to activate level 3 mini-waves, slow immunity, and weaken resist. The weaken resist is an odd talent, as most of the time if Shishilan gets weakened, it will have probably triggered one of their 100 knockbacks, and seeing as Shishilan is an already slow unit, the weaken will probably have worn off by the time they get to land their next attack. Speaking of their slow speed, the slow immunity doesn't really do much since they are already an extremely slow unit. Last and most interestingly is their mini-wave, giving them a slight boost to their attack. The mini-waves don't really give them much of a boost in range, but it does let them be one of the few units to actually make use of attack orbs simply due to the way attack orbs and mini-waves interact, but besides that, the mini-wave doesn't really add much. One new unit gains Ultra Talents this update, this being Count Machine Mark III. They gain TBA reduction, Curse Immunity, and Barrier Breaker. First off, by the time you get them to level 60, the raw damage will be able to break every single barrier except Ultra Babas and Yukans, but even then, for those two enemies, you could usually just have another Barrier Breaker unit. Second is their Curse Immunity, but the thing is that their extremely short standing range means they would have to constantly tank relic enemies in the first place, where at that point the Curse Immunity wouldn't really be that helpful. Last is their TBA reduction, which is a double-edged sword. While this would allow them to attack way more often for their massive damage stat, this also impacts their ability to wave block, as they can easily get caught attacking while the rest of the front line moves up, preventing them from wave blocking. If you use them for damage, then it would be a good idea, but if you value their wave blocking, then I would avoid this Ultra talent. In this update, there were 5 enemies added, 4 of them being collab enemies from the Rurouni Kenshin collab. First is Kenshin, who is a simple backliner enemy without any special abilities. Then you have Sanosuke, who is an Omni Strike of -200 to 440 with a standing range of 340, but lacks the Savage Blow the unit counterpart has. Then there is Shinomori, who has a 5-second freeze with a 200 to 650 LD. Last is Hajime, who is a Rusher enemy that has the standing range and Omni of the unit counterpart. The only enemy added that wasn't a collab enemy is the Sage Red enemy, Dr. KO. Unlike every other Sage enemy that came before it, this enemy doesn't have a special effect upon attacking, rather using their extremely high DPS to mow down your units. The new subchapter added is Candy Paradise. No new UL stars are in this update. The first level is Soybean Graveyard, featuring BB Bunnies, Zoges, Zoris, Miss Hakas, and Professor A. Then we have Pointed Lake Shore, which has Dogenstein, Gory Black, Trolley Blogger, Old Horn, and Dark Dober. The Candy Downpour has a Doge base, Those Guys and Thrillers, Coffin Zoges, Mega Babas, Dreadboars, and a Cadaver Bear. The Yogurt Archipelago is the introduction stage for Dr. KO, along with Squire Owls, Medusan, and Fallen Bear. Cookie Cutter Ruins features the Surge base, Croco, Znach, Ziggy, Zurzeal, and The Face. Last is the Pop Pop Wonderland, featuring Croxo, CTO Seal, Dogenstein, Spacefish Jones, and Dr. KO. This is a demonstration stage for the Spectrum Cat. 3 new maps worth of June Bride stages were added, providing a ton of Holy Waters, Behemoth Stones, and a rare ticket. In total, these 3 event maps grant the player 30 Holy Waters, 4 red and purple Behemoth Stones, and a rare ticket. With the addition of Boomerang's true form, this adds new stages for Doremi, and to say that the difficulty between the 2 stages is night and day. Baby's First has quickly become one of the most infamous stages, since the level restricts you to only using normal and uber rare units. In a stage in which very few Ubers actually work, most people would have to do it Uberless. But even then, you basically need to have maxed out normals to do it Uberless, including true super feline. Even then, runs can be inconsistent. In the second stage, Professional Babbler, you could run Courier with Cyborg or Slapsticks, or even Dark Glazer with Research combos to quash this level. This second level brings back the green barrier first seen in the last update with the Mysterious Calamity. Another set of infamous stages drops with the Super Smash families, the malevolent counterpart of Clan of the Maniacs. The first stage, Treacherous Road, features Malevolent Macho Legs, Island, King Dragon, and Eraser serving as the boss. They also have Doge Dark, Gory Black, and Raging Gory for support. The second stage, Heinous Road, has easily become another one of the most infamous stages in the game. This stage features Malevolent Mohawk, Lion, Flying, Dark, and Jamira. This stage also has Sir Seal, Ginger Snake, and JJ Jackrabbit support. For the sheer difficulty of these levels, you can obtain a total of 3 rare tickets, 1 from Treacherous Road and 2 from Heinous Road. There are quite a few stages added to the Rurouni Kenshin collab. The first 5 stages are the stages where you have the chance to unlock Kenshin Cat, and each of them rotate between the 4 enemies featured in the collab. The second set of stages reward various time score rewards with 2 crowns total. In total, you can get 1.45 million XP, 2 of every power-up except treasure radars, and 2 rare cat tickets. The third set of stages is more time score rewards with 2 crowns. These stages give a total of 280,000 XP, 4 speed-ups, rich cats, and CPUs, as well as 2 snipers, cat jobs, treasure radars, and 2 regular and rare tickets. Next, we have levels featuring Saito Hajime. These 3 levels reward a cat ticket, rare ticket, and 3 legend cat's eyes respectively. The last stage is on a difficulty similar to an early Uncanny Legend stage. Last is the Gauntlet, featuring Shinamori as the boss. The first 10 levels consist of simple Babas, Sir Seals, BB Bunnies, and One Horns. On screen now is the rewards for the first half of this gauntlet. Then for the next 10 levels, we have Doge Darks, Aku Doges, Sinner Snatches, Condemned Pangs, Aku Gories, Dashuns, and Devil Wives. On screen now are the rewards for the second half of this gauntlet. For the first of these miscellaneous changes and additions, there is a new feature to watch an ad to be able to gain certain bonuses. These include watching an ad to double your XP reward from a stage, getting 10,000 XP from the store, continuing a stage after failing, and drawing from the event capsule once a day. Next is the addition of 3-star the 13th, giving 2 times magnifications to every stage, and 3-star Yodeling Village, buffing enemies to 180% magnifications. The time reward for playtime with the spirits was nerfed, giving a regular cat ticket instead of a rare ticket for having a score of 500. Both Exorcist and Clown Cat's eggs have been given an additional 10 plus levels, allowing for a maximum level of 50 plus 20. On screen is what these stats add up to in total. There is a new cat combo featuring Daliazin and Little Fish. Dragon Aquarium is a unit speed medium combo. There is also a new Meow medal for clearing Super Smash families called Heinous Family. Last is the new user rank rewards. User rank 22,500 gives 3 Ammonite Z, 22,600 gives 5 Cataman A's, and 22,700 gives 5 Cataman B's. The Metal Slug collab is still not present in the game's files for this version. This update outside of the JP version is on more of the smaller side, though I do think it's interesting that they have added a feature to watch ads to gain small bonuses. How do you guys feel about this update? Well, let me know in the comments down below, and while you're down there, be sure to give this update analysis video a like, and if you enjoy what you see here, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, as this lets me know I should continue this sort of content. Also, shout out to the following channel members: Something Something YouTube, Potato King, and Athani for being silver members or higher. If you want to receive a shout out like these channel members here, then become a silver member or higher today. Becoming a channel member supports what I do in a way that helps keep the lights on, and channel members receive an exclusive role in my Discord server, for which you can find a link to in the description down below. Anyways, I hope you have a wonderful day.